Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I'm Michael Greeno. I am the head coach of Pragmatic Strength and lead developer, owner of Barpath Powerlifting Analytics, and more importantly, Devonte Lewis's coach. Part one, we talked about kind of some builder type philosophy and off-season work that we did to prepare him for his all-time world record squat. Today, I'm going to show you what that meet prep looked like and a little bit of philosophy that applied to it. I want you to take away from this video not the actual absolute like things I did, but the overall mentality and the overall like philosophy of what we tried to accomplish during this historic run. We run a really basic cycle when it comes to this type of stuff. It's not what you think, and it's not some like holier than thou. This is why I do this, but it is very much so. This is what makes sense, right? I've been doing this for 15 years. I have not trapped myself down to any dogmatic approach. I use everything at my disposal when it's done in the right context, whether it be accommodating resistance, hyperspecificity, linear periodization, different accumulation and intensification techniques, you name it. I find the good and I use the good, and I kind of use, I leave the bad out. Or I use, when I play this a particular method, strengths, not its weaknesses, right? So if I want to use something a part of West Side method, I will. But if I want to use something a part of like emerging strategies or some sort of like Russian, progressive overload system or something to that effect, I will, right? And I'll kind of mix them all together. And I think it's incredibly important that you understand that. So as a coach, you find your identity, and that identity allows you to kind of make pivots and changes that based on your mind, but also based on the lifter and what happens in their space. Me and Devonte have a very collaborative relationship. He's actually very intelligent when it comes to understanding his body and understanding what we do. And the reality of it is we had we spent time focusing on two goals, and then during this prep. One, we wanted to go for the squat record. We felt it was a possibility. We didn't know entirely, but our goal and we surmised after we had squatted 10-14 for two on an SSB that it was going to happen. We just needed to ensure that we crossed all of our T's and dotted all of our I's, and that we would have a legitimate shot at running at it. It wasn't until later in this prep that we said we're calling 3 attempts, and whatever those attempts happen, they're getting called regardless, right? So, but if you look at the programming as a whole, you're not going to see a powerlifting program probably like you're typically used to seeing when it comes to like the USAPL, PA, IPF type lifter. You're not going to see a ton of hyper specificity. You're going to see SBD days, but you're not going to see them in the context of like how probably you see modern training philosophies happen. I use them as the tool that they are. Devonte is a new lifter. We use that specificity, those SBD days or SB or BD days, to focus on proficiency through those movements as like a competition awareness day. But we're not really focusing on powerlifting as a whole every day that we train. We're focusing on just getting stronger. We're focusing on being mobile. We're focusing on being athletic. We're focusing on playing to our strengths and not our weaknesses, right? And we experimented a little bit to kind of see things are. You'll see that we benched 5 days a week. It probably didn't work, but we kind of just did it because he's used to pushing all the time anyway, because he was a collegiate cheerleader. So he pushed every day. He lifted and pushed and shoved, little 100-pound cheerleaders through the air like every day for practice. So he was used to it. So as we go into this, we really just had three distinct phases, and they're the distinct phases that everyone knows, and it's just the accumulation, intensification, and peaking phases of just good old bread and butter linear periodization, and that's really the basis of how I do things. We periodize things, but I spread the week out and all of our workload out throughout the week. But make no mistake about it, our priority was squat. deadlift really wasn't a massive priority, but we did focus on the finer points. We didn't do a lot of volume. We didn't do a lot of do a lot of volume. We kept it very specific on the competition movement itself, and we let the accessories kind of help us out a little bit and helped us kind of understand things. We also just kind of practice movements. We kept relatively, we spent a lot of time from off season, from our first meet to our qualifier meet, really focusing on our craft. Um, Peaking 12 weeks is not about building more strength. It's about expressing strength. So when you look at this program, you'll see that it's like, oh, where's all the volume? Where's all this? It's like, we don't need that right now. We need to focus on the actual concept of taking what we have and building it as high as we can, because we've already built the base. Now we have to stack it. So when you look at this, we're at 11 weeks out. I'm going to focus on 2 major days, but I'm going to talk about the other 3. We're ascending just like we normally do, because this is the beginning of prep. We're just working on our ascending work, not going anything too crazy, because we're really just kind of, again, when I talked about in the first video, I talked about the proficiency of warming up, the understanding of oneself about warming up. We get 4 attempts on a platform, 4 attempts in a powerlifting meet. And if you look, again, last warm up, first attempt, second attempt, the third attempt, and there are no circumstances whatsoever do we ever in the sport of powerlifting take our heaviest work first. So top-down approaches are never effective. And the reason why they're never effective as they could be, as opposed to an ascending methodology, is because most people do not warm up effectively. Doing a system like this, doing a ascending type work, is just controlling the outcome. Typically, more often than not, in the 15 years as a coach, and especially coaching top level lifters, most have bad sessions or bad meets or bad progressive attempts because they did not warm up effectively. This is how I progress his lifts, and how I progress most of my lifters is through an ascending method. Like I said in part 1, it's just to enforce that we are ready to express that strength in as coordinated manner as possible. So that's why you see this. And again, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's like clockwork. We know that. And he knows his progression, and he knows it well. Same premise here. 6, 5, 7, 8, 8, 5. Again, this is about the priority of the actual competition itself. We don't deadlift this day. We don't need to. There's no point in deadlifting today, right? Like, we're going to deadlift light like that. Like, his skill work will come on the other day. And again, that day's focused on deadlift. This day's focused on squat bench, right? We still bench. We're still benching every day. But again, we're only doing things in context. This is a 5-day split, and our only context of powerlifting are 2 days, on Monday and Thursday. So we have a great deal of recovery, right? These other 3 days are meant for conditioning, mobility, moving the body, clearing our head, going to the gym and having a good personal space with the gym, not focusing on the bullshit of powerlifting and getting and feeling hurt and feeling bound up and feeling all beat up and all these other things. Like, we're going in to work and to feel good and to sweat and to do and to walk and do cardio. Like, he does cardio and he does mobility. Like, Heidi does all that for him. He's a big guy, but he's a big mobile guy that moves through time and space. And he's not going to be a big guy forever. So, like, once we're done with this, he's going to lose a ton of weight, and he's going to go and he's going to live his life. And we ensure that he's set up for that level of success. If you look at his deadlift day, again, all we're focused on is just the priority of things. We're focused on just kind of making this objective. We did a couple singles, 6, 6, 5, 7, 8, 8, 5. Drop down. He cut off because he probably got a little tired, but we have down sets. We rotate his deadlift from heavy to accommodating resistance, which gives us the ability to just kind of stay in the pocket and really kind of focus on the technique of things. Again, he's a new lifter. He's a new powerlifter. Like, we're just focusing on this. The only time I really kind of put in these types of methods is when I know a person needs some like needs some specificity to focus on being a powerlifter, right? He doesn't need that. He just kind of adopted it really quickly. When he squatted 1,003, 455 kilos in his first meet, it was pretty apparent that he knew what he was doing. Also, at the same time, with back squat and deadlift and things like this, like with back squat, like he's using specialty bars. He's using squat bars. He's not using a power bar. There's no point. We're not going to beat up his elbows. We're not going to we're going to use something that's really effective and ergonomic for him. The whole practice like you play mentality only applies when you don't play consistently with, your outcomes. So for him, we throw a power bar in on our core weeks, or give a little bit of a ramp up period. But the overall like risk reward to all of that, with it beating up his elbows and kind of diminishing the quality of his lifts over time, it just makes no sense. So we spend most of our time in specialty bars, SSBs, squat bars, cambered bars, etc., because they don't beat up his elbows. It doesn't trash his back or anything like that. It keeps him fresh and it keeps him moving well. With deadlift, again, we use bands, we use chains, we do things that kind of help him, produce more weight at the top so that he can focus and work through his lockout progression. Again, it's just meant to be explosive. Everything we do is done with explosive intent. Everything we do is done with explosive intent. It is done with a degree of athleticism. Each movement we do is meant to be an athletic movement, not some just going through the motions type movement. And as crazy and as obvious as that sounds, most people do not know that they're moving slower than what they probably could be. People will go through and they'll do leg extensions, they'll do split squats, they'll do their bench press, their squat, and they'll do it incredibly slow. But then if you hook the velocity meter up to their lift and you're like, hey, you can move faster, and they do, or they're not warmed up. For instance, for me, I always tell the story, like when I warmed up, I use my velocity meter. Like once I get to like 374, like 3 reds, I will not go up in weight until the velocity is at a minimum level of like 0.55, 0.6, because my body's just not ready to be able to express that level of strength. The last time I did it, it took me like 7 sets. 7 sets at 374 before I got faster and I got faster and I got faster. Then I went up and I went and did my top sets. I wasn't fatigued. I just wasn't primed. Same premise here with Devonte. 10 weeks out, again, we're just accumulating. It's not going to be any magic here. Again, we back off deadlift. We're doing banded deadlift as a means to like dynamic effort work. And it's just, again, he's just focusing on his motor pattern. That's all he's doing. Focusing on motor patterns. We're benching every day, keeping the load relatively simple, relatively safe. We're just benching every day, just to see what it's doing. We're long pause bench, wide grip bench, banded bench, close grip spoto press. We're just kind of rotating him through, but he's still recovering incredibly well, right? Our objective day, simple: 980 by 2, 1025 by 1025 by 1, something we probably could have done 2 of. I don't need to see 2. I just needed to see 1 good one with the potential of 2. That's kind of how this worked. We deload at 9, so this was a push week. 10 and 6 are our major checkpoints. This was checkpoint 1. So we're pacing here for essentially all-time. Our training subtotal was literally the all-time world record, right? Again, I only need to see 1. I just need to see a 9. I need to see, what he could possibly do 2 of, risk reward. I just need to see, if it's clean, it's good, I'm done. It's clean, it's good, we're done. It's just me telling him, hey, you can rack it. Not a big deal. Don't push it more than it needs to be. I just need to know that the potential is there. And again, his estimated 1 rep max is 1101 at this point. So I think we're doing okay. And 9 weeks out, we pivot, and we pivot into our intensification phase. And this is where a lot of places, a lot of people, a lot of older school lifters, conjugate lifters and stuff will kind of understand where this kind of goes. But again, we still keep the overall dynamic of the squat, bench, deadlift, deadlift, bench, off kilter SBD day, but we're still focusing on our other 3 days are focused on accessories, conditioning, general health, just kind of mental health, because powerlifting is just kind of a boat anchor when you do it too much. It just weighs too heavy on the mind and people hate it and all this other stuff. So we pivot. So we're gonna with back squat with chain. We're gonna do our competition squat with chain. Again, we're just laying off this week. Nothing more needs to be talked about. A deload pivot week. Now, if we go into 8 weeks out, 8 weeks out is intensification. 8, 7, and we go into 6. 6 is our next major checkpoint, and that week 6 is meant to establish what 90% looks like and the possibility of what our ceiling could bring. So within 95%, 90%, we're trying to understand where 90% lies. Then we retest that, or we try to re-understand that at 4 weeks out. So this week and this block is about understanding our capabilities. It's about intensifying all of our weights, overloading it, doing it in a way that is risk adverse, but also in a way that is like it's going to produce stimulus that's going to help our nervous system attack these weights in a accumulated and in a coordinated manner, right? So a couple things to point out. So we add slingshot bench and we add chain to our squat. Deadlifts are still banded because again, it's just forcing us to be heavier at the top. We're pulling through the actual lift. It gets harder. It's hard, it's just one of those things. He has a weird lockout at the top because he's a bigger guy. So this helps with the positioning and helps him like be more patient as it gets harder at the top because he gets a little bit impatient. He's a newer lifter. Again, we're just focusing on the quality of reps. The first rep might look a little sticky, but the second rep will look perfect, just like I did in part 1 of this series. Squat, again, we start. Again, we're still doing the ascending type work. And I know I sat there and I talked about the top down method, but you understand, like, we spent all this time accumulating upwards. Now, this is not a top down method. This is your warm up progression method. Follow your warm up progression, but get us here. Get us to an RPE8. Get us to 890. Because if you look, I program 845 to 890. But the overall state of being is like, hey, keep it to roughly a 3 rep max, because that's what we're trying to test. So we got to 890 with 100 pounds of chain. I'll talk about the chain here in a bit because it gets really off the rails, and I'm pretty sure this week it was probably closer to like 120 pounds of chain. Again, bench, we're trying to spend time under heavy exposure. We're not trying to so we're, it goes to 575 for 2, but then we throw on the slingshot and we start doing triples and it gets up to 624 for a triple. We're focused on the time under this weight. We want to get to the meet and realize that anything that we touch, we're not scared of. We've already held it in our hands. We already felt it. We already understand it. And that's really, really big for bench press, because bench press is a very neurological movement, because it requires a lot of back tension and it requires a lot of fight or flight in it. Because if you think about bench press, shoving is a fight movement. It's not a flight movement at all. Like it's a flight movement, but it's both. It's the only time, like, there is no like sympathetic system in pushing, right? The sympathetic, parasympathetic type movements and stuff in our body. Like, we're only pushing when it is for a purpose, for a reason, to get away from something, to create distance from ourselves, to do things incredibly like get away from me, or you're pushing something to manipulate it or something that it's force, right? Whereas walking and using our legs and squatting down are more utilitarian, and they're compromising type positions sometimes, squatting down, but like it's not the same as like a shove. A shove is a very violent thing, and it requires a lot of athleticism to do, and that requires a lot of coordinated neurological exposure. And so, understanding that and handling heavy weight under that type of stress is incredibly important. So that's why we do it. Uh, Little story about 7 weeks out. We did 940 by 1, ascended all the way up. I think we did 865 right before this. Funny thing about this is when we did 947, we weighed the chains afterwards because I looked to hit a giant mound of chain on each side. And this was a very hard rep. Like compared to last week when we did 890, this was a lot harder. And I'm like, dude, are you good? He's like, yeah, that felt really, really, really heavy. And I'm like, okay. And that's really concerning. And I looked at it as like, I grabbed the chain as we were like deloading the actual bar. He's like, I was like, dude, this feels really heavy. He's like, yeah, it's 100 pounds. And I was like, okay. So we have a crane scale and we checked it. It was like 180 pounds total. He squatted 1120. He didn't squat 947 with 100 pounds of chain. He squatted 1120 something. He squatted 947 with 180 pounds of chain. Like it was a lot. He's like, yeah, it just felt like super, super heavy. I'm like, yeah, you squatted 510 kilos, right? Like, of course it's heavy. So, as we kind of, as we progress forward, he's like, man, he's like, yeah, that was just a lot. I'm like, yeah, it was a lot. So he essentially squatted through his first attempt and his third attempt on one set, without him knowing. Again, more exposure. We're pushing upwards on our raw bench, but then we're just going up and we're pushing more exposure. That's really what the intensification phase is all about. It's just simple bread and butter. Again, the week before our primary push, we back off this week, we push this week. It's pretty simple. Like we took away the bands the week that we pushed. Now we rotate to a max effort type thing. So dynamic effort, max effort. Pretty simple. Again, we kind of cut out this week because we knew that 6 weeks out we needed a little bit more recovery. We only did 4 days this week, and we moved over into 6 weeks out. Now this is where the rubber hits the road. Again, we go back to dynamic effort deadlift because again, deadlift's not our priority this prep. We're just kind of letting it subtly grow and we're just trying to work on the technique. Squat was our priority, right? We go into this again. It's not a top down approach, even though like it just shows these numbers. It's not a top down approach. What it is it's an accumulated approach. We already know our warm up progression. We already know like everything before this. It's already dialed in and it will not change from here to the meet. We go 991, super simple. We could have done it for 4 to 5 reps. We go 1047. The story of this one is it got hard. It's because we never touched it before. But at the same time, he missed it because of a misgroove. And I think it's on the internet. You can see that he misgrooved. He dropped his chin and his chest collapsed. He's like, nope, I want to take it again. He takes it, and it wasn't a 9. It was closer to like an 8, maybe 8.5. He absolutely destroyed it. 1047 flew. And it flew just as fast as it probably did on meet day. And we're like, oh crap. Same thing with bench. We continue to accumulate. Again, we're just adding more weight. We're intensifying things. We did 3s, we did 2s, and now we did 1s. He touched 650 for 1 because we did a lot of work. Again, we're just focusing on squat. We're focusing on kind of putting this day together, doing good work over here. Safety squat bar, again, is still the same stuff that we're just doing. At this point, we kind of started to kind of understand, it's like, okay, we're going to start trimming the fat going into the peak. We see this and we had a good idea where things need to be. All we needed to know is that we need to probably see this one more time. So that's it. Like at this point, we touch 1,000 plus 3 times in prep in very, very coordinated manners. And it doesn't need to be more than that. It doesn't need to be deeper than that. We're still focusing on our health, our mobility, and what we need to be able to do to kind of stay functional and stay conditionally, like physically fit. That's what these other days are for. Again, you're just balancing the 2 major days. That's it. It's really just a 2-day split with a lot of like mental health and physical health in between. Everything backs off at 5 weeks out. Again, that's a deload pivot week, and we pivot into our peak. Again, we're not changing much at all, right? This week was done with a power bar. This week was not. This week, not, now we go into 4 weeks out. This is our last week on a squat bar. We handle a squat bar. We rotate to our banded deadlift to accumulate. We push our deadlift this week. We go up to 780. This week, we work up to potential opener. We hit 992 at RPE8. All we needed, and we know what we learned about week 6 is that 991 is probably our opener. We go back to 4 weeks out. We validate it. We hit 881. That was super simple. We hit 992. Super simple. Again, we already know our warm-up progression. It's already dialed in. So all we have to do now is we have 432 and just dial. Now it's about dialing everything in. This is all competition practice at this point. It's practice your warm-ups. At 4 weeks out, it is every session that you do on your squat, bench, or your deadlift is literally understanding your progression, understanding your overall meet warm-ups and progression, just kind of taking a photographic memory of that. So he knows everything at this point. You go into 3 weeks out, opener. This was potential opener. Now we are going to set the opener and look for a potential second attempt. 881, 992, 1041. It's that simple. And I didn't remove the chain note. I don't care. We focus on bench press, same thing. Opener, possible second. This accumulated a little bit more. Slingshot, again, we're keeping it. We're keeping that exposure. We add a little bit of low pause deadlift because we're like, hey, let's just kind of work on some technique there. Let's shore that up a little bit because we're not getting a lot of volume now because we reduced to 4 days a week. Again, opener, possible second. We have to be able to deadlift in the same week, so that's what we're doing. When we go into the peaking phase at 4 weeks out or intro to 5 weeks out, basically now we're opening and we're doing openers and seconds. Now, 2 weeks out, rubber hits the road. We hit everything we needed to hit at 3 weeks out. We hit everything we needed to hit here. All I need here is a taper. I need him to hit 992, make it super easy. We're already trending for an 1120 squat. Everything's super easy. Opener, possible second, pretty easy. Doing still keeping our conditioning. Hit our opener. Meet week. Meet week is simple. We just taper. We take the time that we need. We do a quick little SBD, a couple little SBD days, and then it's our competition day. This program as a whole is very, very, very elementary. The philosophy behind it is understanding when to expose people to heavy weights in a risk-adverse way and to use the tools to your advantage. Walking someone through an entire power bar, squat, bench, deadlift day, multiple days a week would only just get him hurt or reduce his longevity. And that's what you see all too often. When you take away the premise and you take away the overall philosophies of this is expand what you have and what you have available. Use your tools. Use all the tools and all the methodologies at your disposal, because the reality of it is this 11-week, 12-week prep, I used about 4 or 5 different methodologies combined into one, right? We rotated things through. We did, we undulated things. We did dynamic effort method. We did max effort method. We did linear periodization. We did block periodization. Don't limit yourself to one thing. That is the thing. Find your identity, find what works for you, find your mental pace, and then communicate with your lifters. Show them your vision, guide them in your vision, help them believe, and you too can have an all-time world record holder should they have the talent. Thanks for listening today, guys. I hope you find this valuable. Until next time, see you guys.